First of all, I should say that I think you are very much taking advantage of this boom that Brazil is going through right now, and you should do so while it lasts. I'm not sure how long it will last, because from everywhere in the world, the news that come are not particularly exhilarating. So I think that Brazil is probably not going to be able to continue to be in such a jazzy mood as it is right now at this point. Let me start throwing a few ideas and information at you to see how you react, and I hope that you will not be too harsh in the questions that you are going to address me later on. First of all, I think that President Lula, former President Lula, has become a sort of Getúlio Vargas in the hearts of the Brazilians. Getúlio Vargas was probably the only icon, together with President Kubitschek, the one who transferred the capital to Brasilia, the only icon that there ever was in the 20th century in Brazil. He governed for about 20 years and finished in a tragic way. But when he was deposed by the army in 1945, there was a sentiment that people lacked his presence and want him back as soon as possible. And there were carnival songs that said so, and people really had a sort of feeling of great nostalgia for Getúlio, the old man, they call him, o velhinho. Lula has become like that. Lula is virtually invincible, I think, as a political factor and as a candidate wherever he runs. I think that there is nothing to think that he's going to fade into the background. He's too much of a political animal to retire to his country house or to his apartment, even because his apartment is very small. Apparently, I've never been there, but I'm told that his apartment in São Bernardo is quite small. So I think that he goes out all the time. There was a joke when he left, because apparently he likes a drink. There's nothing wrong with that. That he would end up drinking himself into boredom. And I don't think that's the case at all. He's extremely active. He goes everywhere. He goes abroad on business missions. He goes abroad on talks and conferences, and I think that he is absolutely active. I'm beginning by talking about Lula because I think that he is the decisive factor, not the president. There is no limit to his ambition to return, and no limit to the willingness of the people to re-elect him. So that's a fundamental factor in analyzing the Brazilian scene, political scene at this point. I think that no matter how hardworking President Dilma is, and no matter how serious, and even no matter what her achievements are, and I hope that she's very successful, for example, in organizing the World Cup in 2014, still, I believe that the charisma that Lula has are a very unique factor, and that are going to be decisive in any case. And I think that Dilma will be making way for him, unless, of course, she is so successful with the economy and so successful in every count that she rises to the same height in the popular esteem as he has at this point. Let me now turn to a subject that may be a bit arid, but I'll try to explain to you as clearly as I can what I'm saying. I think the key question is whether Brazil is going to be able to escape, get away with the world crisis that is going on and that is hurting severely most of our more important partners. I think that the answer is clearly no. President Lula, in the crisis of 2008, said that it was just a small wave and that Brazil would just overcome it easily, jump over it easily. This time he has said nothing. And the President, Dilma, has said just now in New York that she's profoundly worried about the situation. She said that at the UN and in several other places. And of course, she's right. I don't believe that you can have a free ride on a crisis of that nature. Although it must be said that Brazil does not have a great reliance upon foreign trade. Foreign trade is less than 35% of the gross domestic product at this point. And we have reserves of $350 billion. So I think that from that point of view, there is no expecting a very serious thing. Also, on our favor is the fact that we have a very solid financial sector with, after the consolidation that has happened and after the reforms that were conducted by my President Cardoso in 1995, 96, I think we have a system that is quite solid, and even for the smaller and more vulnerable banks, there are mechanisms that can provide for their safety nets. So I don't believe that there is any risk of a financial flare-up resulting from the crisis. Of course, however, the idea that we can continue to grow at Chinese levels is completely far-fetched for the moment, at least. And what we had last year, 8.5, is not to be repeated even this year. Every week, the economists are reducing their bets for this year and for the year after. And it is clear that there is going to be a stop in this situation. The government is, one of the things that the government is trying to do is to reduce interest rates. It has attempted a very small exercise in reducing by 50 basis points the base rate. And this has been very much criticized by many people. And I think there is a strong point in that, in the sense that in order to fight inflation, the only tool that we have available, viably available at this moment, is monetary policy, is interest rates. I don't think that we have the ability in the short and medium term to do a substantial reduction in the fiscal burden. It is beyond the control of the government. It is politically unrealistic to think so. And therefore, the attempt at loosening the monetary policy is a very risky one, since it was the only one, and inflation keeps going up, and is going to keep going on slowly, but it's going to keep going on. It is at 7.2%. We have virtual full employment, and we have also a credit bubble, so pressures for inflation to continue to grow for the moment. And the government has tried that. I think that it may be a very risky exercise, in the sense that it is not possible to expect that under the circumstance there will be a rebounding of the economy. I don't see how there could be a rebounding of the economy, even with the devaluation of the national currency, the real. That creates a certain window of opportunity, because at 1.5 reais per dollar, as it was a month ago, we are now at 1.82, so it's a reasonable devaluation. And that, of course, is going to give some incentive to exporters, and is going to cut the advantage that the importers have. But I don't think that that is sufficient. That's a rather marginal factor. I don't think that it is sufficient to provide fuel for a rebound of the economy at this point. I think that it is a bit dangerous indeed, as I said, to lower the interest rates, because the interest rates form part of, together with flexible rates of exchange, form part of a policy and trade liberalization, form part of a policy that has been successful since 1994 and that has been retained even by governments of completely different coloration as we have had in this span and under different circumstances. I think that I'm not saying that the government has abandoned the inflation target altogether, but it is certainly a step in that direction, and it is a risky one in my opinion. But coming back to the exchange rate, I think that while it represents a certain degree of incentive, it also represents a vote of less confidence in the Brazilian economy. The real was the single currency among the emerging countries that was hit the most by devaluation at this point, and of course this means something. On the other hand, I think that we have been taking measures in the trade area that have been a step back in the orientation that we had. The idea of increasing, not necessarily tariffs, but especially taxes like the industrial tax on industrial products, and other things, intensifying anti-dumping measures and so on and so forth. I think all of that forms a pattern, and coupled with substantial subsidies for exporters, including the resurrection of a long-dead measure, the so-called crédito prêmio do IPI, which was really a cash advance to the exporters that was finished in 1982. All of those worry me because they constitute a retrocess. There is another area where I think also we have certainly shot ourselves in the foot, and this is in the oil area. We had, I think, a very sensible law that was based on concessions, like most normal situations in oil, and the companies would have to invest and would have to run the risk of finding oil or not. And right now we have changed the law a few months ago in order to have the state oil company Petrobras being the only explorer, the only operator of the wells, and also having monopolistic rights over a number of important areas where there are good promises of oil, and several other advantages, which I think is going to discourage the foreign investment, because I don't see companies like Exxon or Shell coming in and investing fresh money under the new rules without having control over the operation and without having a comfortable situation, because this is also accountable to an agency, a new agency that has been created that can veto the process at any point whenever it's going. So I think this is a nationalistic measure that is uncalled for at this moment, that is going to increase the burden on Petrobras, financial, operational, logistical, technical, and this is not going to help exploring the oil that is already very difficult and very expensive to find, because it is found at least 200 miles from the shore, and probably much more most of the times, and at depths that are unbelievable, depths of 7,000 meters or so above the sea level. So I think there has been a retrocess there, and this is mostly because of an ideological decision to do that. Finally, just a word on foreign policy. It has been discussed here this morning whether foreign policy was an important tool of Brazilian promoting national interests, and I certainly think so. But there is also, on the same time, much right in the comment that was made that the pursuits of Brazil in the realm of foreign policy, just like the permanent seat in the Security Council of the UN, and the formation of a sort of South bloc to probably confront the North bloc, I don't know, but that's not explicit, but it must be the idea. At least it was the idea in Bandung, and in the 60s, that was the main point. I think those notions are somewhat erroneous, in my opinion. I agree with the idea that was discussed here this morning on that sense. But on the other hand, I think that Brazil is pursuing very concrete things, like South American integration, for example, like an attempt to give prestige to the dispute settlement mechanism of the WTO. The WTO, there's not only the Doha round, which is stalled, as we all know, but there is a dispute settlement mechanism, which is one of the most important, if not the most important conquest that we had in the Uruguay round. And this is very much alive and kicking, and we have been using it very often, and I think it's a good thing. So I think there are both pragmatic and ideological motivations in the Brazilian foreign policy. And I think the mix could not necessarily be the best one, of course, but I don't think that we should dismiss the idea that foreign policy is an important factor. The fact that no politician covets the seat of foreign minister, unlike happens in most countries of the Atlantic Alliance, for example, is due to the fact that politicians in Brazil look first and foremost to things that are going to give them leverage in their own constituencies. That is to say, public works, resources, finances, the ability to employ people, and so on and so forth. And the foreign minister, of course, has no strength in that field. It is not a very big budget that can be used for anything of the sort, and it would be out of order anyway, isn't it? So I think that the foreign policy of Brazil has indeed, as Professor Amaury de Souza said, been the object of a breakdown in the national consensus after the Lula government, and there are opposing views. But I think that the divide is not really so profound that we do not have a general sense of a general idea of what's good for the country, what's interesting for the country, and that I think slowly we are going to make some progress. I think, for example, the question of Iran that I described in an article just after it happened, the attempt of Brazil and Turkey to diffuse the crisis between Iran and the Security Council permanent members, that resulted in a terrible defeat for Brazil. We lost 12-2 in the Security Council together with Turkey. I think that was something that is being corrected, not in a public and strong way, because, as I said, Dilma cannot afford to undo things that Lula has done with a voice in the trombone, isn't it? She has to do it very quietly and very understatement. But I think that's going on. So I think that we have at least small adjustments happening at this moment, and that foreign policy is not going to be anymore an instrument for the promotion of conflict, first of all with the United States, but in general with countries of the first world. I think Susie will let me stop here. Will you not, Susie? She promised some rather aggressive measures if I spoke too little, but